So I'll switch my camera off also. Yeah, okay. So let's do a quick recap of what have we learned so far in React. You guys tell me, क्या पढ़ा आपने React में? According to you, what can be highlighted as a topic that has been covered in React? And nobody's gonna say intro to React. CDN Babel, how to render data on DOM. Okay, okay. So okay, let's do this on VS Code and then we'll come back here because again, it's good to have these things in notes also. So day 2, and this will be React.in. Right. So first thing first, we started with how to attach, right? For now, I'm not gonna say install because हमने अभी तक install नहीं किया, right? We have just learned how to attach React and Babel in our application. Is this done? Is this done? Right? Once we have attached that, we have learned how can we render our application on UI. This is done. Do we know how we can render our application? Right? So what's the most important thing to do this, to rendering stuff on application? What's the most important line, those 2 lines? Show and DOM, okay. Okay. So again, before you start answering, a small segue here. It's in black. Let me put it in red. Take a छोटा सा segue so that you think in that direction. React is gonna be what kind of application? Multiple page application या single page application? React is gonna be a single page application, right? Right? If something is a single page application, that means it's just gonna contain a single page, right? Is it clear that in HTML, if we are referring to a page, we are evidently referring towards a tag, be it body tag, be it a div inside that body tag. If we're referring a page, we are referring a tag. Yes, so that means that as a parent, there should be only one tag as a parent. And उसके बाद उसके अंदर सारे चिल्ड्रन आएंगे, सारे पेजेस आएंगे, right? So there should be one like parent page, and then inside that parent page we should be able to visit the other pages, right? Or rather we should be able to call these functions. This makes sense? Single page application का structure. Right? We'll study this in more depth. Don't worry about that. But just the point, how do we render our application? Given that it's a single page application, it has to have a single starting point. How do we write that single starting point? बताते कैसे कि it's a single starting point. From here we are starting. Think of it as a plant, right? A plant can have multiple leaves, branches. These are pages. But where will this plant start? From a root, right? The first thing first, we have to create a root. Now, where do we access this root from? किस object में से मिलता है? Is it from React or is it from React DOM object? React DOM, because we are trying to attach an element towards DOM, right? हम DOM में element attach कर रहे हैं. That's why we are using React DOM, from where we access a key which is called create root. Rather, I would call it a method. What does this create root method takes? Reference of what? An element, right? So it takes reference of an element. Right? Now, usual naming convention of that element is root, right? Be it name, be it ID, be it class. Usually, जो naming convention होता है, which is officially followed, is this. That element should have ID of root, right? although if the value can be changed, it can be anything, but it's just that a naming convention that has been followed. Clear? Clear? And finally, this is creating that route. How do we render that route on UI? We access that particular route and we apply a small method on it, which is called render. Clear? Clear? And by default, how many renders can we have? Just one. Just one render. ये चीज ध्यान रखना, because shortly, by like half hour before the session ends, this thing is gonna come up again. कि कितनी बार render होता है? I'll ask you once again. Clear? Clear? Okay. Fine. So that's there. What else have we learned yesterday? और कुछ सीखा? Or that's pretty much correct? Correct. We learned about JSX also, right? So once you have initiated Babel in your script, it's pretty clear that now you are enabled to use JSX, right? And inside JSX, we have learned a lot of things. We have learned how we can write HTML inside JS. We have even learned how we can write JS inside HTML, right? If I ask you again quickly, what was the bracket that was used for writing HTML inside JS? Finally, return करने से पहले, the round parenthesis, right? And what about writing JS inside HTML? Curly braces. What was the name of this guy? Curly braces को बोलते क्या थे? Object. Okay. It had a name. Interpolation. Interpolation. Right? To keep this name in mind. Right? Because even though you might know how this thing is used, if I ask you what is JSX interpolation, you won't be able to answer it because you have never heard about it. Right? But although you have now heard about it, you know what you can do inside this. Right? You can write entire JS inside this. All right. What else? What else? React dot fragment. Remember this. Remember this. Fragment. Right? Right? Why do we need React dot fragment? If I go and let's say if I have a final object that I'm returning in root dot render, and there I go and write return. I'm writing div and I'm writing a section. Will this be a valid syntax? Will this be a valid syntax? No, why not? I'm wrapping it in parentheses. It can only accept one object, like one child, right? It has to be a single entity, a separate entity. Now, given that we don't want these two elements to have a parent, what we can do, we can either use React dot fragment, right? So this can be done, dot fragment, or this can be even mentioned as this, right? So this. Clear? Clear? So this is one way of writing that. All right. Anything else that we have covered? So overall, this is what we have covered, right? Sure. Now we'll dive further and we'll try to understand how we can create complex structures by using HTML and all. So let's start with that. First thing first, let's create our index.html, and over here, let's first create our application ready to accept JSX, right? So again, just follow the steps and let me know what should I do. First step क्या होगा? What should be the first step? Attach the script. Attach the script. So should I go here and search for CDN links of React? Right? So I'll go and search for it. I'll get these two. Why these two? Why not these two? Because we are working in development environment, right? We can make mistakes. this is somewhere where more stricter things will be followed. So let's go here and let's attach it. All right. So now if I go and write my script, will I be enabling JS6 or still we are missing a small thing? Babel, right? We have to convert our normal JS into something that JS6 understands transpilation, correct? So I'll go and search for this, right? And over here again, I might have searched for it or maybe not bookmarked, but I have searched for it previously. That's why it takes me directly to that page. But over here, if you visit this, you will visit this Babel page. Here you have to visit the sidebar and you have to get the standalone version, right? And in this standalone, you have the script. I'll just copy this and I'll just paste it over here. Now is my script ready to start doing things? Missing one more thing. We have to mention the type. So type, it's going to be text/Babel. Right? Now is it ready? Right? So thoda sa, let's separate our concerns. Let's have index.js over here, right? And rather, I can even name it as J6, but for now, let's keep it as JS and I can give it a src, which will be index.js, right? Let's create a div, which is going to be acting as a root of our system. So let's have that. Right? We're pasting script below body. Is there any specific reason for that? Yes, we want the UI to load first, then we want the script to start running. Right? Now we don't want our script to run first, because if script runs first, it will check, do we have a div in it? And if script runs first before the body, it will see there is no root, so it will throw an error. Right? That's why we first want the UI, whatever there is, to load, and then we want to load the script. Clear? All right, fine. So in next line, let's go over here. Now we can start with our basic setup of what we do, right? The basic setup is again of just 2 lines. First line will be, it's a const root. I'll initiate. What should I access? React DOM. React DOM, right? And what I want to access from it, create root, and then I'm going to give the reference. So document.get element by ID, and that will be root, right? And finally, we have to render some stuff. So I'm going to go and write root.render. And over here, we're going to write either a tag, or I would rather go and create a function, right? So let's create a function. Let's say const, let's call it app, right? Equals to, and over here, we can just return a simple div, and that div holds a h2. Welcome to my application, right? Anything that we are missing? No? So should we run it? Okay. Okay. So only 2-3 people have mentioned it. What about others? Ashutosh, Praveen, Vikram. That's it. App A should be capital every time. It doesn't matter, right? But a convention that is being followed is that whenever you use const, if you name something with it, it is supposed to have the first letter as capital, right? Again, these are conventions that are being followed in industry. It's not necessarily कि वो syntax नहीं समझे. That's fine, right? Here we'll have to name it as like kind of capital. That's the convention that we follow. Clear? We have written root.render, but do we want to render something? Yes. What is it? The application. Now there will be again 2 ways. One way you can do this, but given that going forward, we are going to use a different way of approaching React. Let's keep a habit of writing it in this fashion, right? Whenever you are rendering stuff, you can call it in this fashion. right? This is kind of equivalent to this, right? And how will we pass arguments in it? I'll show you, right? I'll show you later on. For now, is this fine? Are we missing anything else? No? Let's run it then. Let's run it. And there you go. We have our application ready, right? So this was so far that we have covered yesterday, nothing much. Now, for today's agenda, what we want to do is, going forward, we will be creating websites using our React only, right? So we have to understand how we are creating stuff in it, right? Now, what does creating stuff means? Let's say again, we're visiting Flipkart, right? Over here, just remember about your DOM when you were learning DOM for the very first times. We visited this page and we started thinking of these repetitions as a single div which will be mapped over. Yes, yes, yes. So React में क्या होता है? We start thinking not just in terms of card, we start thinking in terms of components, right? So by any chance, anyone has any idea what does a component means? Anyone? Component. Same button parts, little bit. Okay. Okay. Take it. Take it. So again, let me show you guys a bit about that. So let's say we have this app, right? We have this app function that we are being calling, and this app function is basically returning a certain thing in it, right? Right. So given that you guys understand that React is a single page application, this will be the parent of everything in our website. हर एक चीज का this guy is going to be the parent, right? So now let's say we have a platform, right? We are creating a platform. This is the web page. You have a nav bar over here, right? You have a body over here, and you have a footer over here, right? You have this three kind of structures. Now, if I tell you that these structures has to be individually thought of, not just created, इनको individually think भी करना है. So in that case, how will you think about it? What I mean is that, let's say, if you're not getting it, let's say here we are writing div h2 welcome to my application. If I go here and write navbar, right? Navbar, I copy this div, right? I go here like this. I go here and I write content, right? I go over here and I write again. I go here and I write footer over here, right? And given that everything needs a parent, so let's give this a fragment as parent. Okay. So will this be a way of doing it? We have navbar, we have content, and we have footer, right? This is one way of doing it, right? But the thing is that for now we have just written the headings. We have to write complex systems in it, in which we'll have to write certain buttons that we need, inputs that we need. In content will be having a whole different kind of thing. Maybe हमारे पास forms होंगे, maybe you are showing some card or something, and in footers you have these multiple buttons. So writing it in this way, will it get this congested? Messy करेगा, right? ठीक है. Now from now onwards, whenever I'm talking about components, na, what should strike in your mind is that I'm talking about a function, right? Going forward, whenever I tell you about creating a component, what will you think about? Creating a function, right? Going forward, this is what's going to happen. Now, let's say if I tell you guys, I want three component, three, थोड़ा congested, मैं खुद इसको कर रहा हूँ. I have an app and I want three components in it. So what am I evidently asking you guys? What do you have to create? Three functions. Functions. Okay. Okay. We are there. If we are creating a function in JSX, what is that function supposed to return at the end? If you are attaching it in app, one element, a single function has to return one element, right? So finally, three functions will be returning three different elements. This guy will be returning nav, this guy will be returning content, and this guy will be returning foot, right? और हम क्या करेंगे? Finally, we'll just compile these into a app, right? And we'll have our own application just by this format, right? So we just do a small thing for me. Replicate this, right? Replicate this piece of code that I've written and just separate everything in a separate function, and separate function create करके at the end your UI should still look like this, even though you have separated every code. Clear? Can we do that? Do you think you can do that? Question clear hai everyone? Replicate this code and just separate each and everything separately in a separate function, and finally just get this thing. All right, everyone, you guys have 5 minutes. Please do this. 5 minutes, 6 minutes. By 10, please try this. Nikhil, give the entire code, all those three functions, and finally compiling that function. Can you give the code? I can, but it's not much. You can just quickly write it. You don't have to write in this fashion also. You have to create your own separate functions. Right, very good, Everest. Very good, Praveen. Nicely done. Okay, good, Abhishek. Uh, wait. But app may you'll have to write some other stuffs, right? Yeah, to fix that. Also, you don't need fragments and other functions. Okay, Narayan, correct. Good. Bar, content, footer, chicken, shake. Correct. Good. Footer. Vikram, correct. But think about it. Can we optimize it a bit more? जब navbar, content and footer, when they are returning, are they by default returning single entity? So do we need fragments there? The, Nikhil, 70% correct. But then you have written four different render functions. So only last footer will be valid. Nothing else will be taken. Okay? Vivek, paste your code. I'll tell you what's the issue. What's the issue? Content footer. Okay. And you have root and in app you're compiling it. Okay. I'm incorrect. Return comp1 comma. Okay, that comma I'm a bit skeptical about. Is it working? Vivek, I'm not sure it should. All right, guys, focus up here. Let's see. So over here, what we can do is rather than writing this, we can create three separate functions for this, right? So let's have a const. This will be called navbar. This will be called navbar, and what this guy is going to return, it's just going to return this specific thing, right? So let's have that. Then we'll have const content. And what this content is going to give return div each. Oh, we already have that. Let's just copy and paste it. So this, and then we finally have this. So let's get that. And const footer equals to, so return. And now that we have created separate functions for each and everything, what should be the next step? To come in app function and compile everything together, right? Functions that we have created. Now we have to compile it, right? Now some of you did this root.render content slash this root dot render footer slash this, right? So let's say have a navbar also, render navbar slash this. Now you guys tell me, is it a valid way of doing this? Okay. If no, why? Why not? Can we not have multiple root dot renders? No, right? We are not supposed to have multiple root dot render in a single file, right? So what root is gonna do, it's gonna keep on reassigning itself these values, these values, these values, and finally जो last लिखा है, that is gonna stick, right? So for now, footer is last. That's why it is sticking on your DOM. Let's say if I kept navbar as last, navbar would have been there. So this is not the way of doing this, right? It's a single page application. Only one starting point has to be there, which is app, right? So app returns a fragment. Can we attach all these three in this fragment? Yes, yes, because at the end of day, they are still returning divs, right? Or elements. So what I can do over here is I can call navbar, right? I can call content, and I can call take, but it's not working. We are not seeing that. Why? No, no, we have to call it in that fashion. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. But एक अलग approach अगर लगाना try करे, then we should know ना कि why this approach won't work. So why will this not? Because this way of calling a function is this JS way of doing things. This is not JSX, right? This is JS way of calling a function. So rather than doing that, what we could have done, we could have compiled it in this fashion, right? Like some of you have done. But again, why is the last call is sticking away? Why? Because again, whatever component that you have loaded last now, that will work. So what we could have done, we could have either created separate interpolations for each of them, right? We could have thought it in this fashion. Either we could have done this, right? This, right? Now each and everything is loading a separate function in itself. Yes, or we could have skipped all these steps and we could have directly written it in this fashion, which even HTML accepts. Like HTML can accept a function call in this fashion, right? So we'll have content and we'll have footer. Clear? Clear? All right. So getting it how we can create multiple pages inside a single page. Clear? And these components that we are going to discuss about, they are going to be their own functions, right? So just this is the flow of React, guys. That's pretty much it. Nothing else is there in React. You will have your main page, which will be your app, right? And this page, you will call separate components in it. So in this app, we are compiling three components. We're having navbar, we're having content, and we are having footer. If you want something else, you can write another component for it. You can attach that component over here. Clear? 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 Render not required for only for ABC. Render is required just to stick your very first point of contact or app to the DOM. That's it. Just पहली बार उसको लगाना है. Nothing else. Clear? Clear? Shall we move forward? Right? Now. Now comes a question कि what if I want these components to be dynamic, right? आपको ये components dynamic चाहिए? right? These components are supposed to be dynamic. Let's say, okay, I'm telling you guys, this nav bar should have a name, right? This content should have the name of our user. This footer should have the name of our user, right? So by default, if I'm giving it a user, सब में एक ही user जाना चाहिए or separate user should go there. If a user is logging in, the user should be shown his name in each place. In that case, where do you think the starting point of that data will be? Given that you know कि it's a single page application, data का starting point क्या होना चाहिए? App, app, right? Right? Because this app is the parent, right? Again. ये चीज अगर समझ आ गई तो you will be done with props. So let's say this is parent, right? And parent has what does parent has? That can be shared between three childrens. Let's say they bought a box of sweets, right? Well, box of sweets. They have three childrens, 1, 2, and 3. In this case, if you want to deliver this, which is, let's say कि this is first, second, third, and fourth. Out of, let's say कि अभी कुछ भी नहीं है, there's just a box of sweet that is placed outside house. If you have the option to give this data to someone out of 1, 2, 3, and 4 so that they can equally distribute everyone, who will you give it? Kisko doge? By default, you understand, I'm going to give it to 1, right? Because this guy is parent, he has access to all 3 of them, right? But let's say if I deliver this one, this box, now this box has no relation whatsoever with this, except for they share a same parent, right? So abhi ke liye, it actually makes sense कि we give this box to the parent itself so that they can deliver everything to each one of guys. Make sense? Make sense? ठीक है. If that makes sense, let's create a variable. So let's have let user equals to what user can we have? Let's have take okay, you want that, so let's have that. It's fine. Take. Now, what if I want to share this with someone? Again, guys, start thinking in terms कि this is a function call, this is properly valid, this is a function call, this is properly valid. First, let's discuss about this one. Then we'll come to second one. If I want to pass user in this, how will I do that? In parameter, okay, fair point, fair enough. What about you others? Should I pass it in parameters? Right, pass name, accept it in parameters, pass it in arguments, right? Terminology is straighter. Okay, so let's say either we are passing user, and we are passing user. So am I expecting the user to be present in navbar content and footer? So if I do console.log user, and let me just copy this line and paste it over here. If I go and check my console, am I expecting it to be there? No. Read the error. What's the error? Yeah, Vikram, correct. What's the error? We have to accept the user in parameter. Arguments में तो pass किया, but we have to pass them here also, right? So I'm gonna accept that user, I'm gonna accept that user, and I'm gonna accept that user. Clear? So are we getting that specific user in there? Right? Now, if I wanna have this name dynamically updated, how can I do that? Dynamically updated. JSX interpolation, right? If you want to write a JavaScript code, just write this, and over here you can write the user. You can have this. You can write JavaScript. Same thing. over here, user. Clear? That works pretty much. That works. We are able to share data with children also, right? So this is one way of doing this. But again, whenever you're gonna look at a code base which is written in React, this is like 90% time you won't figure this out. ये मिलने ही नहीं वाला. Because this is being followed rather, right? This is more of a modern convention. So in this case, given that I'm telling you guys कि ये function call है, what do you think? Is there any way of passing data inside a tag? कोई way है wherein you can pass data inside a tag? Have you ever done that? Again, think about it and then tell me. पहले सोचो. Think about all that create element, append and all. Then tell me. Okay, shake correct. Inner text. ठीक है. Fair enough. Maybe some attribute. Okay, that's something that you have to think about. Property. ठीक है. So guys, if we have a tag, what is something that we can make dynamic in that? Two things, right? Either we can make the inner HTML or text dynamic, or we can make the attributes dynamic. Yes or no? Yes. Yes. Acha. Abhi we have two options. Either we can make the attributes dynamic or inner text. In line number 36, 37, and 38. Is there any possibility that we can ever access inner text or inner HTML? Think in terms of self-closing and non-self-closing tags. Can we access inner text or inner HTML? No, because they are self-closing. The only thing that we are left with that can be made dynamic is attributes, right? So attributes can be used to share. Let me put it here also. So attributes can be used to share props, properties और क्या बोलते थे इसको हम लोग for the name parameter, right? Props or parameters in from parent to child. What do I mean by that? Again, a small thing. This is in terms of key value pair, right? So over here, you'll have a key, which will be whatever you want to name it. Let's name it user only, and that will have a value in it, right? Which here is user. We'll have user, and this guy will have value user. We'll have user, and this will have value of user. Clear? Clear? This makes sense? This makes sense? Right? Okay. Now that we have asked it, why is this application not working still? And let me refresh it. Here's the latest error that we have. Read the error and tell me what might be the issue. I'll give you 1 minute. Think about what might be the issue by reading this error. Use inside array. Okay. Use inside array. ठीक है, तो you are starting to think in terms of data structure. That's very good, right? But data structure में think in terms of how the attributes are given property. This is in terms of key value pair. So which data structure accepts key value pair? Hash map or objects, objects, right? JavaScript पढ़ रहे हैं दोस्तों, JavaScript है ना? ठीक है. Now you tell me, is there a possibility कि we might share some other details? Let greeting equals to good morning. And I want to share this greeting also. Greeting equals to greeting, right? And here also the greeting will be equals to greeting. Is there a possibility that we might want to share multiple properties? Yes, yes. So don't you think JavaScript is going to create a structure wherein they are storing these properties? Right? So whenever you share things based on this format, what happens? You create an object. And in that object, it's being stored in this fashion. Equal to dt. This is how it's being stored. So if we are accessing it in this fashion, is that a valid way of accessing it? No, no. So let's do one thing. Let's pick all the user and let's name it as props. Right? Why props? I'm just going to call it as properties, just gonna short form props. Right? Acha. Abhi, this props, is it gonna be an object? Yes, yes. So if I wanna, let's say this is like props equals to this. So if I wanna access user from props, how will I do that? How will I go about it? Will I do props dot user? Yes, yes. So let's try that. Let's do props dot user. Okay, let's do here also. And let's do here also. And let's remove this console. Let's remove this console. And this also. I could have done Control D, but never mind. Is it still working? Right? So this is how you can share properties or props with children from parent. Right? Okay. Now let's have another h2 over it, right? Another h2, right? And this will be in italics, and that will be no. Let's have it here also, right? Yahi pe. Let's have it in italics itself, and we can say hi chota beam, and we can greet them, right? We should greet them. So let's have the greeting also. So we'll do props dot greeting. Will I be able to access greeting in that fashion? Yes. Yes. So similarly, I'll just copy this and I'll just paste it everywhere. Paste it everywhere. Works. We're naming them and we are greeting them also. Right now, given that there's a possibility that we could be passing a lot of properties, is this a correct way of doing things? Again, every time doing props dot greeting, props dot user and all. Same thing again and again and again. No, no. Ever heard about object destructuring? Now is the time to make it handy. अब उसको use करने का time आ गया है. Right? So what we are gonna do, we're just gonna go over here and we are gonna destructure it. Make sure that the names, the keys that you're giving, that are same. Right? So you'll have user and you will have greeting. Now you can just remove this and that works totally fine. Clear? तो एक बार destructure कर दो and then you can use it however many times you want. Yeah, so let me just fix this also. Last one, I'll keep it as it is so that it's just there for a reference. Right? Okay. So this is clear, everyone? Any doubts in this thing? How you can pass data, share data with children from parent to child? नो, सबको क्लियर है? एवरीवन? ठीक है, तो आई गिव यू गाइस 4 minutes, not 5 minutes, and just quickly copy this entire thing. Can we have 5 minute break? I'll give you a break after 15 minutes. एक छोटी सी चीज और है, promise, it's just very small thing, nothing big, right? Not a new concept or anything. And then we'll give a break. उसके बाद because we are starting something else, तो थोड़ा सा time चाहिए. Alright, so again, you guys have 5 minutes. Please replicate this, whatever we have done so far. Destructure कहाँ किया है? ये देखो यहाँ किया है. तो यहाँ पे props object आ रहा था, right? हमने क्या किया? We know कि this props is an object. We just destructured it. वो object को पकड़ा and we destructured it and we told कि greeting है आप में और user. This is destructure. Alright. So please, quickly इसको replicate करो. By 37, I want everyone to replicate. Once you're done, please write one in chat. इसने के लिए any doubts? एक्सक्लेमेशन मार्क कुछ नहीं है, एक्सक्लेमेशन मार्क है. इट्स नॉट ऑपरेटर. नॉट, देखो हमने इसको टैग के अंदर लिखा है बट नॉट इन जेएस, राइट? टैग के अंदर इट्स स्टिल जस्ट अ कैरेक्टर, नथिंग एल्स. अगर जेएस के अंदर लिखते हो दैट वुड बी अ डिफरेंट मीनिंग. इट्स जस्ट रिटन इन टैग, ऐसा लिखा है बस. आई हाउ टू चेंज फॉन्ट स्टाइल? फॉन्ट स्टाइल एज इन ये जैसा दिख रहा है. I mean, this is just because of this italic that we have written. If you want to do CSS, you can give them, like, let's say, you pick this div, and given that sare div mein you want to do the same thing, so you can just add a like ID, you can add a class name and you can do that. Right? CSS part I'm leaving it to you guys, because you know everything is going to be same CSS point of view, right? What you're doing in CSS, that's entirely same. Nothing is different. That's why I'm just leaving it to you guys. मैं बस जो important stuff है, I'm just covering that. Here, and in yesterday's assignment also, you had a lot of CSS to do. So if you were able to do that, that's great. Then. Right? Achha, there's a possibility that you might be asking about inline CSS. Right? So if everyone's done, maybe I can show you guys how inline CSS works. Everyone done? ठीक है. So let's say कि if we are talking about this specific tag, right? And I want to do inline CSS on it. So what I'll do is I'll go and access the style attribute. right? Style attribute, I'll go and access it because in tags, the style attribute is there to give inline CSS, right? But the only catch here is that the style attribute, basically, if you're writing some dynamic data in it, what you'll have to do is you'll have to keep it as an object inside object, right? The reason being, every attribute that you give in style, let's say कि हम दे रहे हैं color as blue, this is being taken color as blue, this is being taken as a key value pair, so this has to be stored inside a separate object. That's why just the format is that you create a JSX interpolation, and then inside that you create one more object, and in that object you go and write whatever style that you want, right? So let's say color we want blue, right? So that is there. Everything will be same. So let's say font family, and what I want to do is I'm gonna do sans, right? So that will be there. Clear? So yeah, this is how you can do. Nothing else. All right. Okay. So given that everyone's done, a small question that I have for you guys. Let's say that I had to make every user a bit different. No, we can't do that in this one because the tags are different. Okay, fine. So we'll have to create another structure for that, the question that I wanted to pose. So let's do one thing. Have a break and then we'll do that after that break. Okay, fine. So anyways, for getting auto suggestion while writing style in this way, इस way में auto suggestions नहीं आते usually. Right, but for sure there will be some extension, you can figure it out. एक बार check करना browser पे जाके same thing. Right, चलो. So everyone be back by 45 and we'll continue from here. Yeah, everyone back. हो गया break. ठीक है. So I had a small question for you guys. So let me just create a small component for it. Right. So I'll just take this up. Let's create another file. Let's call it props.js. Have this, and let's have a const app and return. This will be basically there to render our application, right? Check. So now we have a const greet करके एक function, right? And this function accepts username, right? And it accepts a certain greeting, right? And okay, let's go over here, and what it returns, it basically returns a div with again let's say b nine, and it says hey grab the username and whatever greeting you have sent them, right? So let's say here we'll just greet. Take. So now we have created a greeting component. Think of it in this terms ki you are gonna have a div, right? And that is gonna have some data. But let's say ki again you have to create another div with the similar set of data, and then again you have to create another div with a similar set of data. Will it make sense to create separate files for it? What do I mean by that? Will it make sense if I go and do something like this? Greet slash, let's say, username, uh, and I as, let's say, यहाँ पे we are sending a string, right? And then let's say in greeting, we are sending something, good morning, right? And then we'll have another greet, right? And this will have username. Let's say we have from, and we can have greeting, and this can be good morning, right? Let's say कि हम सबको good morning greet करते हैं. So in this case, let's say कि if we have this structure also, and let me go and attach this in index.html. So index.html of day 2 here, rather than index.js, we have props.js. Take. So over here, we have two different things, right? We have two different stuff, right? But is this an optimized way of doing this, given that there's a possibility that 100 other users are there? No, this should not be the case, right? This should not be the case at all. So how can we fix this? The problem statement, again, we can make, I'll clarify it. There's a component that has to be called multiple times, right? Again, think of it as a component which is creating a card, and inside that card, you are giving all the data, right? Now, back in app, here we are attaching everything by ourselves. And let's say there are hundreds of these cards to be created. Is this a good way of doing it? Or can we make it dynamic? If yes, how can we do that? You have to give me, like you don't have to do any change in greet. You have to share with me the code of what you can update in const app. Keep this in mind, this greeting will be saved. We can use map over data, yes. So how can we do all that? Please write that code and share it with me. What updates have to be done in app? You have 8 entire minutes for this. Think about it. नहीं 8 नहीं 8 ज़्यादा हो जाएगा 5. So by 57, everyone please do this. Create an array if you want. If you want to map over it, do that. If you want to do a for each over it, do that. But finally, I want output in this fashion. Need 100 output? Yeah. Let's say we are assuming, right? You don't have to create 100 data array. If you want to create just 4, 5 array is fine. It's just that the point of scaling has to be clear. Done. Even at least came up with logic how you can do that. Okay. All right. Very good, Ashutosh. Very good. Uh, username and greeting. ठीक है. Good, Praveen. Username, users and you are sending. ठीक है. Aisha, correct. Good. User and list. Okay, list is the array and we are mapping on it. Correct. Everest. Good. अरे फ्रॉम लेंथ. अरे निखिल भाई, ये तो चैट जीपीटी का आंसर डाल दिया तुमने. नहीं नहीं, ऐसे मत करो यार. सेशन में तो एकदम बराबर आंसर दो फ्रॉम योर साइड. राइट, खुद से सोच को. राइट, दैट विल हेल्प यू इन लॉजिक बिल्डिंग. नहीं तो वो चीज, अगर वो लॉजिक बिल्डिंग में गैप रह गया ना, फिर कितना भी सीख लो फ्रेमवर्क वट एवर लैंग्वेज यूर लर्निंग, इट वोंट रियली मेक सेंस. लॉजिक जब बना रहे हैं उस टाइम ध्यान दो. चैट जीपीटी को भूल जाओ, बंद कर दो, डिसेबल कर दो. and you are accessing username from it. Good. Vikram, correct. Right. What about others, guys? Okay, okay, chalo. Let's see, guys. Focus up over here. So, first step could be that first thing first, let's collate all this data together, right? So, let's have an array, right? So, let's have an array and let's call it data, right? And over here, we're gonna have objects for each data, right? The first thing first, we have username, right? So we'll have username equals to, for first data, we'll have this, right? Then we'll have another set of username. Oh, it's not equals, it should be called. All right. Then we'll have another set of username. It can be Vikram, and then you can have another set of data, right? So you can have username, and let's say you have Walter, right? You can have username, say you have Beam or something, right? And then furthermore, you can have the greetings also. So you can have greeting, right? So let's have the same greeting everywhere. I don't want to write again and again, or let's say at least alternate way, let's have separate greetings. So this and this. And yeah, maybe very clear. And this, these two will change with night, right? This also, right? What's missing? Okay, did we made? Okay. So this data is clear. We have seen JSON data a lot in last unit, right? While we were doing fetch and all. So this is pretty much clear. We can maybe get a dummy image also. So let's have this dummy image and 200 by 200. Okay, this seems fine. So I'll just copy this. And over here, I can have a image, right? And this can be this, right? Similarly, same thing. We'll have image and this again, image, this and image. Yes. Take the overall, if I want to show you guys, I don't want to remove UI. So this is the overall structure where we have username, we have greeting, and we have an image attached to it. Take. Now, over here, can we call this greet method multiple times, these many times, whatever the length of this data is? If yes, how? We have to iterate over the data array. Data array के ऊपर iterate करना होगा. Yes. So should I go with for each or should I go with map? Map. Why? Why map? Why not for each? In JS unit, we were using for each a lot because given that we are using JSX, something is expected from a function, right? And if you are running a for each, you can't return anything. In that case, we'll throw an error. So what we want to do is we want to pick the data and we want to do a map over it, right? Now, why am I not getting suggestions for map? Are we doing something wrong syntax wise, right? Interpolation, right? Okay, take it. So I'll pick the data, we'll pick map, and over here we'll provide this. All right. Now, what will be the next step? We have the data in element. We know what we are gonna get in return from this. Call the greet, right? So over here, I should call the greet. Call the greet. This missing something. We have to pass the values, right? We have to pass the values. राइट, ठीक है, एंड आयशा करेक्ट। वो अभी बाकी लोगों ने नहीं पकड़ा है, बट अभी मैं लिखता हूँ, एरर आएगा तब पकड़ेंगे। ठीक है, चलो। सो यू हैव टू पास यूजर नेम, and username will be element dot username. You have to pass greeting, and that greeting will be element dot greeting, and you have to pass image, that will be element dot image. ठीक है? Okay. So we have ran app. It is returning this. This is running. Why don't we have anything on browser? UI पे कुछ नहीं है. The reason being return statement, right? So if HTML is being used inside JavaScript, return statement is needed, right? So we'll put it in curly braces and we'll just return it. Clear? So let's have this and this. Clear? Now we have everything in perspective. We can even go and add more data here. It will still remain dynamic. You don't have to worry about it. Clear? Clear? And these guys can be created inside a card also. So what I can say is, isko jaake, this data is being mapped inside this, right? So rather than doing this, I'm just gonna give this div a name, right? Div. Tick. And this div, I can give it a class, right? So class name equals to, let's say I give it class name of container, right? And in index.html, I can go and do a CSS, right? So style and dot container के अंदर के divs, I want them to have, uh, अच्छा, we'll talk about that later. First container, and this we can make display as grid, right? Grid. And grid template columns, let's have repeat, two or three, actually two, we can have four rows, then 2, 1 fraction, right? So this is there, then we can have this div, right? First thing first, let's make it a width of 50%, and let's margin it to auto, and let's give it a gap of 40. Let's come back into these containers. So let's give them border of 2 pixel, 1 pixel, 1 pixel solid red, and adding 20%. Right, ठीक है. So back in here, I haven't return under the map, but it's still working. You're using this way. Okay. Um, right. So you're saying that you haven't written a return statement and it's still working. That's odd. Maybe we can take a look after this, right? Just give me a second. I'll just clarify. Okay. So over here, let's attach the image also. So we have the image tag. So we'll attach the image also. So how can I attach the image? I have img over here. So I can accept it as img. And here I'll just go and write source equals to, it's going to be dynamic, and we'll have the images, right? So we have a structure over here. So is it not much more simpler than our usual JavaScript, where we have to create a separate div, then create the image tag, then create the bold tag, then create the I tag, फिर I को bold में append करो, then I have to append I and B in that and all. Right? So this way, we are making it more declarative and we are decreasing our own complexities. Clear? So at this level, can everyone at least create this structure by doing this? Everyone. Anyone, any doubts just with respect to this thing? No doubts? All good? All right. Can we do for each as well instead of map? For each नहीं करोगे because for each won't return anything, right? वो undefined return कर देगा. So you have to return a tag from it. Vikram, can you paste your code in chat? I'll take a look. Greeting.map. Okay, so you haven't written a return statement, but again, let's say कि अगर single line is there, right? If you're just writing in a single line format, let's say something like this, where we are not even using curly brackets, right? In that case, क्या होगा? Is this a valid syntax, guys? Is this still a valid syntax? Because we are using arrow functions. If there's just one single line of thing, we can just directly return it. Right? The return statement is still being written, but वो hindsight में होगा. Right? That's why it was working. Means in React, we cannot use for each only. For each, I mean, it's not that for each is abandoned. It's just that for each won't be used to render HTML tags. Clear? ऐसा नहीं है for each. If I want to run for each, I can surely do here, right? Let's say कि I want to reduce something. So I can use for each, I can use reduce everything. That's fine. It's just that अगर आपको return करना है, you have to return something. For each is gonna by default return undefined, but you have to return something. The bracket is not required for it. No, it will just directly return this data. That's fine. Clear? तो वो थोड़े फायदे हैं using arrow functions. Okay, but if we had used normal functions, we would have to have rapid. ठीक है, guys, this part is clear. If you're able to do this, that's great. Right, so far so good. Any doubts over here till here? Anything? नहीं, because then we are gonna move toward a whole new different kind of thing. Right? हम events की तरफ बढ़ेंगे actually. This is clear, right? All right. So now that in previous unit we have created entire websites, something like this looks kind of off-putting, no? Because we are just putting things with UI only. What about adding events? I want to click on some buttons, I want to do some changes. Yes? Yes? ठीक है, तो let's see how we can attach events in our system, right? So again, I'll create a separate JS file for it. So let's call it event.js. And guys, I'm just having one index.html file because I just don't want to copy and do all that stuff again and again, right? So I'm just gonna make it as events. Okay, and props.js से again, let's just copy just these two lines. Event में, let's just paste it. Okay, so over here, let's have const app again, app, and this will return something. For now, we don't want to know about it, right? Let's say we're thinking about creating a counter application. Remember counter applications? And पता है क्या, in React interviews, interestingly enough, whenever it's like entry level interviews, na, around 60 to 70% people, first question they will ask is create a counter in React, right? At least that used to happen a year or so before. I'm not sure कि अभी क्या हो रहा है, but at least a year prior, everyone used to ask what can you create a counter in React? So let's create it. We'll need three components, right? We need a button, we need something to show what the count is, and we need another button. Yes, yes, right? So let's create a separate function for it, or separate components for it, right? Now, again, once again, if I ever ask you about components in React, what will you think? In what terms will you think? Component क्या है? It's just a function. Right? So let's have a function, and this is going to be called counter. Here's the counter. If it's a function which has to be attached in DOM, it has to return a HTML code. Now over here, I'm going to have a div, and this div is going to have three stuff. It's going to have a button, right? This will be pehla wala button, it's decrement, right? Decrement button. Then we'll have a increment But missing something? Missing something? Show on UI, right? Right, show on UI. So let's have a H2 and this will show something on UI, right? So let's have a count. Let's declare a count variable, and this count variable will hold 0 by default, right? So over here in this H2, should I come and put in interpolation the count? Will I be able to show that count on UI? Right? Abhi UI पे नहीं दिख रहा है. Let's just attach count over here. So counter, and there you go. So now we'll get that thing on UI. Right? Let me just zoom it a bit. Okay. So now over here, if I wanna update this count, do I wanna trigger some functions or something? Yes. Yes. And what's the way of updating things? We have to trigger a event. If button is clicked, we have to trigger an event, right? Now in JS6, right? In once you have started attaching React in your system, add event listener will be vague, right? You won't be able to use it. So you have to just do things directly over here. So what was the attribute for attaching event in HTML itself? On click. So this is how we are gonna write it, right? And in this on click, we'll define what do we want to do. So let's say I want to create a function, and this function is called handle click, right? And handle click accepts a number, right? And let's say here we are calling that handle click. So in here I'm sending -1, and again here's the on click, and this guy basically handle click, it accepts 1, right? So based on this, what code should I write in this function so that whenever this button is clicked, this number is decremented by 1, and whenever this button is clicked, this number is incremented by 1? What should be the logic inside this handle click? Count equals to count minus num. Okay. 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 Count equals to count -1. Okay. Okay. So if I come over here and I write count equals to count plus num, will I be wrong? Think about it. Whenever this function is triggered, handle click, it's passing a string or it's passing directly a number? Number. What's the orientation of this number? Is it an integer of negative kind? Right? So in num, this is gonna be negative, right? So if you have -1 over here, what does basic mathematics says? Plus minus, plus minus, 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 right? So here decrement will happen, and if just 1 is being sent, that will get added. So this seems fine. Logic, right? Logic seems fine. Logic seems fine. Okay. And we'll go and write console.log count over here. Right? Before checking the console, UI पे क्या दिखा रहा है? What are we getting on UI? -1. But the count is 0. What can possibly be the reason for this? Correct, Vikram? Others? Very good, Abhishek. Is some function getting immediately invoked? Handle click, we're passing some parameter in it. It's getting immediately invoked. So should we wrap it? Should we wrap it? Still, guys, JS fundamental is still gonna stick here. यहाँ पे it's applicable everywhere. It's just that you have to find the places. That's it. Right? So let's attach this. This makes sense. This makes sense. And let's do it for this guy also. So this makes sense. Now, do we have a proper application for ourselves? right? Let's see. So if I click on inspect, if I click on inspect and if I visit my console, and over here, if I click on increment button, what should happen? Did not get that. What did you not get? This thing. Okay. So here in this JSX code, wait. Let me take it. In this JSX code, is this function being called as soon as it is being written? Yes. So what's gonna happen whenever this function is being called? As soon as this button is presented on DOM, वो क्या करेगा? It will trigger this function by default instantaneously because we have called this function, right? So to prevent that instantaneously or immediately triggers, what we do, we wrap these functions, right? Yes, but we did not click. You didn't, right? JavaScript did. JavaScript runs from line 1 to last line. So as soon as this line is encountered, JavaScript ने क्या किया? It created button, it created on click, and then it put this code in it. But ये code क्या था? It is just a function call, right? तो वो क्या करेगा? इस function को directly call कर देगा, right? तो even before this count, very first time वो दिखता है UI पे, that count is already updated, right? So if I show you कि if this was rather than -1, it was 1, right? So that count should have been 0 plus, right? It's just getting immediately involved. So to prevent that, what we do, we wrap it inside another function. So this is just wrapping it inside another function, nothing else. Clear? Clear? Now, this will only get triggered when the button is clicked. So if I click on increment, what is expected? 1. So if I click on increment, 1 is there. If I click on increment, numbers are getting updated. If I click on decrement, the number are decreasing. So technically our code works. But what about UI? What about UI? Inner HTML? No. We're using Babel, right? So only JSX should be there. पुराना JS भूल जाना. Inner HTML we don't know about it. यहाँ यूज ही नहीं होता इस environment में. Right? This is where I'll ask you that question again. How many root.renders can we have in an application? Return the count. Okay, let's return the count. Let's return the count. Like, Habibi, if I do that, it won't happen. The reason being, again, how many root.renders can we have? Just one. Just one, right? So basically, this is where we start talking about how a normal DOM and a React DOM is different, right? So let me create a structure over here. And let me create a structure over here, right? And let's say ki in this DOM, we have a element and we have another element. And in this DOM, we have a element and we have another element, right? Now this is your usual DOM and this is React DOM, right? ये समझ नहीं आ रहा है ना? React DOM, right? And this guy has another name. It's called VDOM also. अच्छा वो चलो बाद में लाऊंगा. अभी के लिए this is DOM and this is React DOM. Whenever a page loads, they both resemble each other. DOM में ये दिखा, React DOM में ये दिखा. But as soon as a event is triggered, something else happens. What happens? Whenever an event is triggered in DOM, DOM क्या करता है? It erases everything, right? Erases everything and it recreates another DOM, right? And वहां पे it will again assign these structures, right? Then let's say again an event is triggered this will be erased and recreated, and this keeps on happening up until the events are being triggered, right? But is there a possibility that when event is triggered, let's say in this component, यहाँ पे एक event was triggered, still it's gonna erase everything in that DOM and सारी चीजें फिर से place करेगी. So does it make sense कि if an event is done here, we know that only change that is happening is in DOM is in this component. So does it make sense कि why we are again updating this and this? We should just update this. Will that be more thoughtful from a developer's perspective? Problem statement समझ आ रहा है? चलो एक और बार समझाता हूँ. एक और बार समझाता हूँ. ठीक. So we have a DOM and a React DOM. First let me make it a bit small. This looks better. ठीक है. तो let's say first time render हो रहा है, right? First time renders means page is loaded for very first time. ठीक. Now in this case, what's gonna happen with this DOM is everything is gonna be erased, right? And a new structure is gonna be created with exact same things. But the point is that this is gonna happen each time an event is gonna be triggered, right? Let's say कि if event is being triggered 5 times in just this component और वो इस component का structure change कर रहा है. Just assuming कि first में उसने एक phone add कर दिया and second में again the structure is being created. This was there, another phone is added. So only this component is being updated, right? This is being untouched. ये untouched है, right? So does it make sense कि we are erasing everything and recreating it everything? Or what React DOM does is वो क्या करता है? It just updates this particular thing. It doesn't erases this. It just updates this particular thing जहाँ पे change हुआ है. तो which one would you go with? कौन सा ज्यादा optimized है? Erasing everything and recreating everything, or just erasing that particular stuff where event was triggered and then updating it? Just erase the particular thing. Just erase the particular thing. Very good, Abhishek. Abhishek ने एक अच्छा example दिया. Nice one. So he said कि let's say you have a house, right? Again, I'm gonna draw a house. A house. ठीक. And यहाँ you have a kitchen, right? You have a bedroom over here. You have a bedroom over here, and this will be बहुत बेकार map बना दे. But anyways, this is the kitchen, right? And you have to just fix the kitchen. उसके लिए what you do, you destroy the whole flat, and उसके बाद you just update the kitchen with this. So does that make sense? No. If you just have to update the kitchen, just do that ना. पूरा recreation क्यों कर रहे हो? Just update the kitchen, right? So this is what your regular DOM look like, and this is what React's DOM look like, right? So now that it is clear that our regular DOM and React DOM are in different or are of different nature, there's one more thing in between, right? So let's say if something is being updated, let's say this is being updated with this. In this case, what's gonna happen? React क्या करेगा? It's not directly gonna interfere with DOM. It won't directly interfere with DOM. What it's gonna do, it's gonna create a photocopy of this DOM, right? It's gonna create just a simple photocopy of this DOM, right? And that photocopy is called VDOM, or in other words, virtual DOM. So I hope everyone knows what virtual means. VR, virtual reality and all, right? So it just creates a virtual DOM, and what it does, in once the triggers are ended and the website knows the user is not giving any more input, now what it will do a check with original DOM. वो original DOM के पास जाएगा and it will do a small check. Okay, what's different between this and this? So what's different? Just this particular component. Just this particular component. तो वो क्या करेगा? It's just gonna take this particular component and just update it with your regular DOM. So a specific component will be updated. That's it. Everything will be left untouched. So are we optimizing the speed of our application just by doing this small trick? Because think about it, एक page में there are gonna be like 50-60 components, right? You'll have a component for nav bar. Inside that nav bar, you'll have a component for left side of things, right side of things. Then you will have a sidebar component. In content, you will have slideshow component and all whatnot. Everything will be based on components only, right? You will have this structures also, wherein you have your app, and inside that you have two children components, navbar and sidebar, and inside that you have further more children components, right? So if just an update is being done in this, it only makes sense कि सिर्फ ये component update हो rather than everything being destroyed and recreated. Makes sense. Makes sense, right? This is where your React DOM and virtual DOM come in play, right? So React DOM comprises of this whole setup wherein you have virtual DOM kind of acting as a middleman. What it does, it creates a photocopy of DOM, and finally, once the events are done being taken from user, it matches itself, compares itself with the original DOM, and whatever changes are there, it just update that particular change. Here, अगर theory थोड़ी ऊपर से जा रही है, everything is mentioned in notes, so don't worry about taking notes for now. Everything will be there in virtual DOM, right? But overall idea समझ आया कि what's the idea behind this, right? Now, how does this thing tie up with me asking root.render कितनी बार होगा आपके application? Here, so React only allows you to render your application once, right? एक बार render करने देगा, but it gives you a possibility of re-rendering stuff, right? Means spelling गलत है, but re-rendering है, right? What that means, you're not creating everything from scratch. You're not destroying the scratch. You'll just pick a particular component which you want to re-render, and you'll just update that particular component. For that, it provides some things which are called hooks, right? To do all this or to deal with all these changes, right? For now, we don't want to know about hooks or anything. It's just that we want to know about a simple keyword which is called use state in it. That's it. That's it. Abhi hooks kya hai? It doesn't matter to us. For now, we're just going to take help of a simple keyword which is called use state, right? So let's see what this use state guy does. Let's go over here. And, yeah, let me remove this handle click, and let me remove the count, right? So I'm just going to write a syntax for it, and then I'll explain what all it does. So let count and set count equals to react dot use state and 0, right? Okay. So what does your use state does? It is basically a state management tool, right? What does state means? Let's say, again, I'm going to create that structure. Finds, yeah, how do I decrease the size? Achha, here. So let's have this, right? Let's say I have an app, and in that I have two different components, and these components have two different stuff in it. Here apna stuff, here apna stuff. So if I just want to manage this component, I'll have to give this component a separate environment so that if there's a change, I'm going to do that change in this specific component, right? This use state helps in creating that environment. What's going to happen once I use state? Now I should rather write here. Once I use state, it provides me access with an environment, right? And ये environment क्या करता है? It provides an initial value. This initial value, we store it here, right? तो React से हम लोग use state मंगा रहे हैं, react dot use state This is the syntax for it. And in this, we are telling it ki by default, I'm giving you an initial value, which is going to be 0. This can be anything. This can be a string. This can be an object. This can be an array. It can be anything. For simplicity's sake, we are taking it as a number for now, right? So by default, the value of this use state is going to be 0. But why have we done array destructuring over here? It provides two more things, right? वो दो चीजें और देता है. Inside that array, we're gonna have a state and we are gonna have a state updater function. This is what we have. Now, what does it sounds like? क्या लगता है? क्या होंगे? This state is basically whatever variable and whatever data you have stored in. And the state updater function means that whatever change you want to do with this specific variable, right? So if I use this function to do all the changes, that component will get updated. How does that happen? Let me show you this. So over here, if I'm just accessing that count, you can see that in UI, I'm writing 0. Let's just remove everything. Let's keep this. And over here, we can still have a handle click, right? We can still have a number. What happens there, we'll discuss it a bit later. But for now, if I inspect, inspect is already open. If I inspect this in console, if I go over here and as soon as the page renders, what I want to do is I'm going to just console.log the count, right? So what am I getting? An output 0, right? So for now, you can think of it as let count equals to 0 is being defined. But if I go and do a console.log of set count, what am I getting? It doesn't matter कि ये क्या चीज है. Am I getting a function? Right? So this is basically a function where all the changes will happen. Now, how that changes happen, let's go here and let's see. So over here, again, we are doing the same thing. -1 and 1 is being sent. Here, what we'll do, we'll use set count, right? And in this set count, given that it's a function, I'll call it. But while calling it, you can access whatever the state of that count is currently. So I'll go here and I'll write count. And what I'll do is I'll just do count plus now, right? So what I'm doing in here, is that clear to you? So basically, I'm taking the previous count. Just assume that in this set count, just when we are doing map, right? I told you guys that we're gonna have element, we're gonna have ID, and we're gonna have array. This was inbuilt. That's why you assumed that yeah, this is gonna have that thing. Similarly, assume that this set count again is an inbuilt function, and in the arguments, what we are gonna get over here is what was the last value of that count. So by default, it was 0. By default, it was 0, right? Now, if I click on increment, what's going to happen? We're going to call this handle click with we're going to call handle click with this one. This num is going to enter. We are calling set count, which is the state updater function. And in there, we are using the count and we are updating that count, right? So if I click on increment now, you'll see that even in UI, that change is being updated. Right? Similarly, if I click on increment, if I click on decrement, these changes are updated on UI itself. Right? So now, given that React only allows render once, it can allow re-render multiple times if you're using use state, right? Which is provided by React. Why React is providing this? Because it only wants change in a specific component. तो वो क्या करेगा? It's just gonna destroy and build this counter component again and again. Rest, for now, we just have that counter component only in our application, so it doesn't make sense that much. But if you have multiple different applications now, it won't deal with उनको it will leave it as it is. Clear? Clear? So everyone, is this clear ki how you can use state rather than a simple variable and how you can update it, right? Again, if you have any doubts, this is what you are getting in return from use state. We are destructuring it because it is going to be an array, and that array basically contains first thing first that particular value, and then to a function to update that value. How do we update that? In this function you can access that value like this, and you can just update, right? Yes, you can take any variable name. Again, the syntax thing, the convention thing comes here is that with use state, we give the function a name as set, right? So again, you will see that whenever I'm creating something with use state, na, let's say I'm naming it name, so I'll call it as set name, right? This is the naming convention that is being followed. I want you guys to follow this. Okay, but this will come with practice. Use state is the most easiest hook that you can ever do. Right? Can we write single line this function? Of course you can, right? Do you think we need this entire handle click at all? Given that we already have a function, just take this function. Isko uthao, right? Remove this. We don't need you. Come here and just put that. So function dalo. Rather than num, what you can do here is you can do count -1, and over here again the same thing, you will do count +1. That's it. There you go. You can increment it, decrement it however you want. Clear? Can we use react.useState1? Of course you can. You can use any number. It will be set it as by default number. Let's say कि मैं इसमें 99 लिखता हूँ. So this will be the by default number. Whenever the page loads or renders first time, 99 will be there. This will be the by default state, right? We're using that count. This count is being used here, right? And from here, if I increment, that particular number will be taken and it will be incremented, right? Let's say this was a string. What's going to happen, folks? Abhi kya hoga? If I click on increment, it's a string. If I click on increment, 991. If I click on increment, makes sense. If I click on decrement, what's going to happen? String concatenation is only applicable with plus, right? And we are doing a minus with it. So again, a simple question, console.log 991 -1. What will be the output? Will it be an error? Will it be not a number? Or interesting, will it be 990 or will it be 990? आप बताओ. NaN, okay. NaN 990, okay. ठीक है. So let's increment it and let's decrement. जिनको नहीं समझ आया, remember type coercion. If it's plus, that means that type coercion will happen with string side, right? The string concatenation will happen. Aside from it, if you're using any other mathematical operator, this will be coerced into mathematical point of view, right? Right? So yeah, that's there. Clear? Clear? Use state सबको समझ आया? Now there are some bit more broader perspective things with it, but for now, we are just doing with it. Clear? So if I ever ask you to create a counter, now can we create a counter? And it's not just about use state, guys. I'm gonna pose two questions. How we use state? Use state, is this clear to everyone? Right? And why we use state, is this clear to everyone? right? That why being that we have to just update a single component, right? That's why React kept the render at just one, right? You can render an application just once. If you want to re-render it, you'll have to just update a specific piece of a component. एक specific component को update करना होगा. And to deal with that, it provides something which is called use state. Clear है? Now this use state आज introduced हो गया, but you're gonna be using it till the end of your front-end career. मतलब जब तक फ्रंट एंड कर रहे हो, you're going to use this use state. It's just that important. It's like a variable in, whenever you're creating a variable, you will just think in terms of this one. Clear? Clear? ठीक है, ठीक. Which state is more important in hooks? Abhi it doesn't matter to you what hooks are and all. Just think about this. Use state. That's it. बस इतनी सी चीज ध्यान रखनी. Clear? Clear? ये part clear everywhere. How you can create this? If I ask you to, if I close this system, will you be able to recreate this counter once again using use state? सब बना लेंगे. Everyone, anyone who says no. नहीं ठीक है. तो I think you are ready for theme toggling stuff, right? So again, a very small concept. It's not a big deal. People just like to make it a big deal, but it's not. It's just simple. We'll visit here. We'll visit theme.js, and in this theme.js, I'll just copy it. I'll write a template and you guys will update it, right? So here our first step. Here we'll create a const app, and this app will basically return what should be returned. Check. Let's have a const over here, right? And this is called dark mode. And what this guy do, it returns a div, right? And us div ke andar it has a h2 which says hello world, but there's a small catch. This div has a style. This div has a style, and that style has background color as black, right? Background color as black. It has padding as 40 pixel, right? Again in strings, 40 pixels, and it has a color of white. Right? So dark mode may we have this stuff, everything is black, it's just the ticks that are white, right? Similarly, we have a light mode, wherein this thing is reversed, right? This will be which color is blue but kind of light, matlab it resembles almost white. कोई है क्या color? Lavender, olive blue. Okay, let's go with olive blue. All right, and color we can keep it as midnight blue, right? The ठीक है. Now you guys tell me, if I write dark mode over here, you will have this structure, right? And if I write light mode over here, you'll have this structure, right? अरे यार ये तो एकदम white हो गया. Guys, जल्दी कोई background है क्या? I mean in blue range. Let me figure it out myself. Blue में if I go for this works. So let's get this theme, and over here we'll have that. Hey, this works for me, right? Again, it's not that clear, but that's fine. Now what I want is, I want a button over here, right? So there you go. There you go. Right? I want a button over here which basically says toggle themes. Right? Whenever I click on this button, right? Uh, Whenever I click on, by default, I should load light mode. Whenever I click on this button, I should show dark mode. If I click again, I should show light mode. Like clicking bit. Toggle, you guys know what toggle does, right? So can we use state for this? Can we create a flag and update that flag based on use state? So I'll share this code with you and you guys update this code and share it with me. Yeah, they should start enabling sharing codes with chat, right? Code sharing becomes a task. Sure. I'll share this link. Everyone, please complete this code and create a toggle feature. Again, the problem statement remains. You just have to make this button as in by default only this particular component should be showing. And if I click on this button, then this component will update. Matlab dark and light may be switch, keep on switching. Set count is working as a routine accumulator and reduce. Okay, that's quite a nice thought. Good observation. But I don't think reduce is exactly something that is being used in hindsight. Good observation. It working kind of like that. Yeah. Okay. Handle theme and very good, Ashutosh. Nice. is sun is dark moon, you state true. Moon, yeah, dark moon. Okay, correct. Urban correct. True. Theme, and that has been updated. All right. Good, Narayan. Correct. Is true, and you are setting it back to once. Praveen, correct. Good. Not working for me. Please explain. I will explain. I'll explain this setup. एक बार बाकी लोगों को पूछो. If it's not working, try reading the error. Error reading is an art in itself. So if you're able to read errors, that's very good. What about others, guys? Are we doing it? Anyone not getting how to use state here? All right, everyone, please focus up here. Okay, everyone, do I have your attention, guys? One in chat, whoever are present. This will be just last piece of 5-6 lines of code. That's it, nothing much. All right, fine. So over here, we know that we need to either show this or this based on which time or how many times have we clicked on a button, right? So over here, what I'll do, I'll go and create a state. I'll say toggle and I'll say set toggle, right? And I'll create a flag, right? So I'll say react dot use state, and that flag will be a boolean value. I'll say by default the toggle is equals to true, right? So I can come over here and I can say if toggle is true, right? For this I'll need to write this because that's JavaScript, right? If toggle is true, in that case I want to load light mode, right? By default I want to load light mode. Else, if toggle is false, I want to load the dark mode, right? So by default, are we loading the light mode? Yes, yes. If I change this true to false, what's gonna happen? We're gonna show the dark mode, right? If I change it back to true, we're gonna show light mode again. Just this change we have to do using this button click. So first thing first, we have to attach the event. How do we attach an event? On click. So we'll write on click, right? And whenever this is clicked, what I want to do is I want to use the set toggle. So I'll say set toggle and I want to pick the original value. So I'll say toggle and I'll update it or return whatever the not value of that toggle is, whatever is opposite of that toggle. Right? So now if I click on this toggle, abhi kya hoga? This toggle will get updated, true will get turned into false, and whatever false situation pe render hone wala hai, that will get rendered. So if I click on it, I'm getting black. If I click on it again, this will be turning into true, false, true, false, true, false. Clear? Clear? So this is how you can do it. Also, again, this set toggle expects just the final value of this set, of this state, right? The toggle का जो भी आप last value रखना चाहते हैं, you provide it in this. So what we could have done, rather than writing this entire function, na, we could have just written not toggle. That might have worked also. क्यों? Because this just wants to know कि what will be the next value of that toggle. We are saying it will be not toggle. Function क्यों बनाते हैं? Because in that function we have, in case we want to access the previous toggle, right? So this should also work. Clear? If this doesn't make sense, it will make sense from tomorrow onwards. For now, you can go with this also. That's totally fine. Clear? Everyone? You state clear hai? Clear hai? At least how you can use it based on these stuff. Everyone? Any doubts? Any doubts? So let's do a quick recap, compile everything, whatever we have learned so far. So where did we started our learning with? Component based architecture. Right? This is the name that we have given. Right? First question with you guys. Why do we have to go with component based architecture? Is there any relation between React being a single page application with it? Yes or no? Yes. Given that React is a SPA, single page application, we can have just one root. That means we can have just one tag which can act as a parent of all tags. Right? That's why this tag is kind of a parent, and the components that we have inside it, are those separate pages or are those separate functions? वो separate HTML के pages है क्या? card.html, pages.html, or they are just separate functions? So these are just separate functions. Right? Then we learned how we can pass properties from parent component to child component. Did we learn this? Props, right? In which format is it shared? Is it shared in array format or object format? Right? Props is shared in object format. So what we do whenever we are accepting it in child, right? Children में जब भी accept करते हैं, we can destructure it, destructure the props. Right? Right? And then we learned how your normal DOM versus React DOM happens. And React DOM has an ace up its sleeve. What's that called? VDOM or virtual DOM. Right? Virtual DOM is nothing but a photocopy of the updated DOM, right? Once the events are done triggering, the browser will check with original DOM what's the difference between OG DOM and VDOM, and then just update the specific component which was changed. Clear? This sums it up, everything, right? DOM versus VDOM, right? And to to help us with this, we had something which was called react.useState, right? In the parenthesis, what do we give it? The initial value, or by default value, right? And then this thing is an array of two things, right? So let state and set state. Now this set thing is a convention that we follow for updation wala function. First thing first, it provides the value, whatever value that we have currently in this use state. And second thing, what does this function do? State provides the current state, or think of it as current value. And what does set state does? Updates the previous state and re-renders that particular component. Clear hai? Clear hai? So this is what we have covered so far in the session. So far, any doubts? Anything? No? So make sure you're completing your assignments. Again, एक और बार बताया था, एक बार फिर से बताता हूँ. The assignment is going to comprised of 60% exact lecture based stuff, 40% something that you'll have to figure it out. And mostly that 40% is in level 2, right? So make sure once the session is done, at that day, at least cover level 0 and level 1 problems. Level 2, you can slowly cover it up within the whole sprint, right? But don't make it pending for next sprints. Clear? Eh? So we'll follow that framework. Right. All right. Sure. So with that note, let's end this session.